News versus news. This is for August 19th, 2019. Oh, what a time it is! And I was thinking about changing the name of the show based on Biden's thing. We could call it Truth versus Official Facts, Official Acts, because official facts and acts are not really true, and you can see that everywhere in all kinds of media here. So, but we're exposing the actual truth here with Jim Fetcher and Scott Bennett. Go for it, guys. This second half is going to be outstanding.
Meanwhile, heads must roll. Outrage grows over Epstein's
Right.
mysterious suicide. People are demanding to know exactly how this happened amid conflicting reports. According to the New York Post, Epstein had inexplicably been taken off suicide watch despite an incident 3 weeks ago when he was found sprawled on the floor of his cell, nearly unconscious, with injuries to his neck. He was being housed in the jail's high security special housing unit, in which high-profile or dangerous detainees are kept separate from the general population. 2 guards are required to make separate checks on all prisoners every 30 minutes, but overnight that procedure was not followed, a source told Reuters. Prisoners on suicide watch get checked every 15. Former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara tweeted he was dumbfounded by Epstein's death. There should be, and almost certainly is, video of Epstein's suicide at MCC. One hopes it is complete, conclusive, and secure. I guarantee you it won't even exist. His death comes less than a day after the release of a trove of documents naming high-profile individuals from a 2015 lawsuit brought by Epstein accuser Virginia Roberts, now Guthrie, against Epstein's madam, Ghislaine Maxwell, who said Maxwell helped Epstein traffic her and other underage girls to sex parties at the billionaire pedophile's many residences. She claims she was forced to sleep with high-profile individuals, including Britain's Prince Andrew, former Senator George Mitchell of Maine, Democrat New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, longtime MIT professor Marvin Minsky, that's the most surprising to me, and investment banker Glenn Dubin. All have denied the accusation. Heads must roll, said Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, in a blistering letter to AG Barr. Every single person in the Justice Department, from your main justice headquarters staff all the way to the night shift jailer, knew that this man was a suicide risk and that his dark secrets couldn't be allowed to die with him. Meanwhile, a prison worker's 4chan post 10 minutes before the news of his death hit the media. A guy in a green dress military outfit switched him out. Meanwhile, we have Detective Jim Rothstein, also known as Jimmy Boots, who is the leading expert, I think, on pedophilia in the U.S., where he cracked many high-profile pedophile cases in New York City, only to find them quashed by the district attorney on political grounds, has explained to me and others that in his estimate, based on his experience, 70% of the American political elite is engaged in pedophilia. Ooh. And where we now have Jeffrey Epstein's death was a suicide by hanging being proclaimed by the New York Medical Examiner, but being contradicted by Cyril Wecht, who has denied it, claiming the idea that he hung himself in a jail cell is ridiculous, and in 20,000 autopsies has never seen this hyoid bone be broken from a bona fide suicide or hanging. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, let's keep it as simple as possible. If Epstein is dead, regardless of the reason, we are the stupidest government president and attorney general in the history of humanity, or we're the most corrupt and sinister. There's no excuse for a high-profile pedophile intelligence agent, potential, even if he didn't know it himself, to for any of the story to have existed at all. And that's the sleeping giant that's going to be arousing itself in the American public, is recognizing that he should not be dead. And if he is, regardless of the reason, whether someone went in there and did a Ranger chokehold and broke his windpipe, which that looks like to me, it's a killer maneuver, because I know in the jails you don't have the room to navigate and hang yourself. You don't have anywhere to jump off. You can't kill yourself. So the mere fact that he's dead instantly tells me he's either, if he is dead, then everybody needs to be thrown out of office, prosecuted, exposed. That the civil war's here because obviously they were covering it up, or they are so stupid they don't deserve to be in government, because this person, as I've said before, is the boil that is full of pus that could be squeezed out and show every evil actor in American politics and American media and international media politics and culture that was drawn to this sadistic, devilish practice of child pedophilia and most likely child murders and such. So Epstein, if he is alive, and this is a great psyop and we're being fooled, he should be a piñata that everybody is beating down and getting all the candy out of him and getting all the information from all of the people that were lured into servicing. I mean, the number one videotape in the history of videotapes would be the sex videotape of Bill Clinton raping some little boy, most likely, or maybe a little girl. That's what it was always said, that Bill Clinton preferred men and Hillary preferred women. Not that I would certainly want to participate in watching anything like that, but I would like to see the watching of Bill Clinton being executed for treason, as well as Hillary Clinton. And this also takes us back to an interesting nexus, which I have personal experience in. The warden of the prison that was sent in, I should say it this way, the warden of the prison that managed Epstein at the time was removed, right? And this claim of someone going in with a uniform, maybe. I had military people coming and visit me in uniform. And the warden at my jail, Jim, was a guy named James Petrucci. He was an old Army guy. And he wasn't old. He was a little bit younger than me. Big, tall guy, you know, very decent chap. But he was sort of a drill sergeant, very harsh, you know, a lot of the guys, you know, he and I had many conversations. Well, James Petrucci was brought in as the new warden of Epstein's jail. So the guy who handled me and Birkenfeld, Brad Birkenfeld, remember the Swiss banker, James Petrucci was our warden. James Petrucci introduced me to Michael Isikoff and Tom Hamburger. Remember the story about Michael Isikoff and Tom Hamburger coming up to the jail and interviewing me for 2 hours? And at the end of that interview saying, Mr. Bennett, why do you think the CIA would do this? Even though I'd never mentioned the CIA. That was James Petrucci who organized this meeting. So there's deep state weirdness. There's some connections. There's something that could be brought out in some sort of a testimony to say, hey, I didn't make this up, but look at the record. Here's James Petrucci. Here's Scott Bennett. Here's Brad Birkenfeld. Here's Michael Isikoff. Here's Tom Hamburger. Oh, we've got Petrucci linked to Epstein in this cleanup operation. The other person that we have connected to Epstein is Renee Alexander Acosta. Renee Alexander Acosta, who was originally the Florida federal attorney that prosecuted Epstein with this sweetheart deal, gave him a year in prison, you know, working part-time. That same Renee Alexander Acosta prosecuted Brad Birkenfeld with the Swiss bank money that he brought over. That was Acosta. So Acosta worked with Hillary Clinton, worked with Eric Holder, and Loretta Lynch, and Lanny Brewer, and worked with Covington and Burling, worked with Tim Geithner, worked with the Obama administration, worked with Robert Wolf, chairman of the Americas, worked with the Swiss government, worked with the Saudis, worked with the Qataris, worked with everybody who had the UBS bank accounts. Acosta, Renee Alexander Acosta, worked with all of these parasites and these conspiracy participants, these racketeering participants, to bury the Swiss banks that were being utilized for terrorist funding and offshore accounts and all sorts of other things, and throw Brad Birkenfeld in prison. That was Renee Alexander Acosta. So that, again, is the most important cornerstone of this whole revelation, was Acosta being tied to Epstein, tied to Birkenfeld, tied to all of the terrorist financing that Hillary Clinton was using and Barack Obama in overthrowing Libya, Syria, and other black operations from Ukraine, Maidan, and all this other stuff. So Acosta has to be, again, treated like the piñata and beaten so that everything comes out of him, and testimony needs to be brought in. Brad Birkenfeld needs to testify. I need to testify. Julian Assange. That's the other thing. If Julian Assange is not in a witness protection program, then we are the stupidest people on the planet with the stupidest president, the stupidest attorney general, and the stupidest members of government, or we're the most corrupt. Because Julian Assange has documents and WikiLeaks cables and personal experience and testimony that he could give to the Senate, to the American prosecutors for complete immunity. And he could expose, Julian Assange could expose the greatest crimes in the history of this country that every single American wants to know. And the more that they cover it up, the more that they pull out these fake deaths, these fake suicides, or obvious killings. Someone went in and killed him where he should never have been exposed. He should have been in a witness protection program at the top of a hotel, surrounded by SWAT teams. The same with Julian Assange. And if that has not happened, then civil war is on. Then there's no hope for this country, because this is the material evidence of a government that is totally run amok, totally incompetent, or totally sold and out of their minds to the addiction of money and child pedophilia and covering all this stuff up. Barr has already got skeletons in the closet because of his proximity and connection to George Bush Sr. Trump has already got skeletons because of his connection to Epstein. Now with the revelation of the Epstein, Petrucci, Bennett, Birkenfeld, Isikoff, Hamburger, Julian Assange, shell game connection, all of this is not going away, Jim. It's all coming down like a hard acid rain. And it's like it's going to disintegrate their sandcastles of illusion and vanity. And hopefully it's going to cleanse us as Americans and expose the rock hard, real American blood and real American character that I hope is going to emerge. And we will have a renaissance in this country. Failing that, where we deserve the doom that we're building on ourselves. Jim?
Oh, wow.
Well, Scott's fairly stunning. I mean, the Epstein not dead, according to Robert David Steele. There's a cover story that the union bosses of the prison mysteriously own a $26 million luxury property in China. In other words, they were being paid off. Meanwhile, update number one, CIA mask on standing or just resting. Noteworthy, he's not in a body bag. His face is pink. That means he's not dead. It should have had a white pallor of a really dead man. Not only that, but it doesn't even appear to be Jeffrey Epstein. The thought is that this is actually Tony Rodham, Hillary Rodham's brother. Not necessarily the body per se, but the face, the image as a result of photoshopping. We know it was taken in a firehouse. It wasn't taken in a hospital. There's a sign on the wall about shutting off your engines and the like. Meanwhile, this report was that he left in a wheelchair out of the front door, but he was cuffed into a military van. There appear to be two options, where Epstein will be taken to a plastic surgery center in Switzerland run by Khazarians to have work done on his ears, teeth, and face, and wind up retiring in Israel, where he's a national hero. Or option B, that Trump's is a genius, that his tweet is a misdirection from the real story. Epstein is now comfortably secure, it would appear, in a military facility in Germany and cannot be eliminated by Hillary, which is the reason they use the image of her brother, Tony, to make it clear to her that Epstein is alive and well, and this is bad news for Hillary Clinton. Scott.
Wow.
Well, I would hope, Jim, that he's in a military prison. I would hope that President Trump is smart, as we've said we expect him to be, that Epstein has been pulled and is used as what he should be. He's an intelligence asset. And Birkenfeld's an intelligence asset. That's why Snowden went after him. And so is Julian Assange an intelligence asset. These are people that have experience in personal experience and drama of witnessing the crimes of the Hillary Clinton, the Barack Obama time in office. I personally witnessed this. I lived through it. I did terrorist financing at U.S. Central Command. I worked under Dov Zakheim. His son, Roger Zakheim, worked at the law firm Covington and Burling after I exposed all of this stuff, after Covington went public. Hillary Clinton was exposed in this, Feinstein, all of them were exposed. And they covered it up, they buried it, they put us in prison for 2.5 years. And you know, you can't make it up, but it's prosecutions waiting to happen. The evidence is there. It hasn't changed. Story hasn't changed. Everything is verifiable. When it's going to be acted upon is another story. And it's not if it's going to be acted upon. It is when it is going to be acted upon. And all of this stuff that is hopeful that Trump has actually got it in reserve. He's got these people hidden away, squirreled away in safe positions. I would hope that's the case. But, you know, hope is not an option. And we all have to keep on our guard and demand this be exposed and prosecuted. Look, again, this is about Renee Alexander Acosta coming allegedly into the Trump administration and saying, I was told intelligence owned Epstein. Well, right at that moment, I would expect Trump and his team, again, he needs a Praetorian Guard investigating everything that Acosta said. What do you mean he's intelligence? What intelligence? What agencies? What is the timeline? What are the activities? Who are the targets? What is the arsenal of weapons that he uses? Is it blackmail? Is it videotapes? Is it audio tapes? Where are his handlers? All of this was a wealth of intelligence that the Trump administration hopefully has been acquiring, and that if this video again is actually Hillary Clinton's brother, which it may or may not be, I don't know, then it would seem to suggest a good thing. We're always hoping that there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't see or know about, but we can't rely upon that. We have to hold up the standard of action, and that is we don't believe he's dead, because if he is dead, it's a crime, it's a cover-up, and it implicates everybody that had custody over him. So again, the propaganda that is saturating the American airwaves, which is something Trump needs to be aware of, what everybody in America is seeing is that, Mr. Trump, you're incompetent, or you're a cover-up liar who is aiding and abetting the death of Epstein. That's what the New York Times and the Washington Post is saturating society with, present company excluded. So everybody is getting the message that he's dead, either because he was killed, which you allowed to happen, if not ordered, Mr. Trump, Mr. Barr, or Clinton too, but he was under Trump's custody, or he was allowed to kill himself, which was because of your incompetence. And what was lost in his death is immeasurable. Lionel of Lionel Media had some good comments. He said, I don't care about all this other stuff. The prosecution and the victimization and the honeypots and all of the sexual pedophilia trafficking, those cases must still be heard. Those prosecutions must still occur. So we'll see if they do, but we just have to keep on our guard and keep demanding that all of this be advanced. Jim?
Don, I believe you'd like to make some comment.
Oh yeah, I'd like to see the dead head of Epstein. Well, I see pictures. They actually give him actual bed sheets in there, and a bunk bed. They had paper.
But he didn't have a bunk bed. It was all. This is all
Okay.
nonsense. We reported last week.
Right.
It was
Yeah, it's this way. This is the way it is. Truth versus official facts.
And look, I lived it. They don't put child pedophile people in
Right.
jail cells with murderers or violent people. They're segregated for that very reason.
Right.
So I mean, I know when I was thrown in, I was in with non-violent people. So there were a lot of pedophile, pornography related people there. A lot of them had, little mental problems, but there were no muggers or killers or rapists or gun violent people. So for them to suggest that there was a violent person as Epstein's roommate is BOP impossibility. It is
Right.
not policy. And to put in James Petrucci as the cleanup guy blows me away, because I know this dude. And again, Petrucci and myself and Birkenfeld all had good little comments and talks with each other. And then the next thing I know is when Brad left and all of our stuff started exploding, Petrucci introduces me to Michael Isikoff and Tom Hamburger. You couldn't make that up. And it's going to come out, Jim.
And it's really corrupt to the core. The whole thing. It's just terrible. Stinks. We got to come to the bottom of it and find out exactly who, what, and where, and don't take
Meanwhile, a rather
cover-up.
fascinating aside, did Jeffrey Epstein have a painting of Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress and red heels lounging in the Oval Office in his Manhattan mansion? The answer is emphatically yes. Jeffrey Epstein had a painting of Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress and red heels hanging in his home. A source who saw it during a business meeting told Daily Mail TV the blue dress seemed to be a pointed reference to his former intern, Monica Lewinsky. The painting was snapped inside the pedophile's mansion in 2012, 7 years before he was accused of running a sex trafficking ring of underage girls. The source was visiting Epstein to present a business proposal. She told Daily Mail it was absolutely Bill Clinton. It was shocking. It was a very provocative sexual picture. Epstein and Clinton were friends with a 72-year-old flying on the now deceased financier's private plane, called the Lolita Express. Several times he said 4. The records, the logs show 26. The source claims she saw a young Hispanic girl waiting to meet with Epstein after her business meeting, saying the girl looked to be about 14. Here you have the photograph. This is the picture of the photograph. There's really no doubt about this being Bill Clinton reclining. You even see the tapestry, the rug with the seal of the President of the United States. This is a bizarre development indeed. The color of the dress seemed a pointed reference to Monica. He is denied being on Epstein's pedophile island. The new twist to the relationship between Clinton, his family, and Epstein. Last month, the former president's office said he hadn't known anything of Epstein's crimes and had taken 4 trips with him between 2002 and 2003, though flight logs showed he had at least 26 individual flights. Even one of Epstein's former sex slave, Virginia Roberts, claims she saw Clinton on the island for a dinner held in his honor shortly after he left office and stood by the claim when questioned under oath. Here's another photograph of Bill Clinton in a similarly colored attire. Rather interesting. After the financier's apparent suicide, Trump retweeted a suggestion that Clintons were involved in the death and a link to a court document saying out Roberts' evidence. Additionally, Epstein's alleged procurer, Ghislaine Maxwell, was a guest at Chelsea Clinton's wedding to Mark Mivinsky at least a year after the time Bill Clinton said his relationship with Epstein had ended. The origin of the painting is unknown. Clinton has his legs crossed over the arm of a chair with blood-red heels, hovering over a rug that seems to bear the presidential seal. The shoulder of the blue dress hangs off to the side as he seems to raise a come-hither finger toward the viewer. The source who spotted the painting says she saw it while being led from the office to his personal quarters when we saw the portrait. It was through a door that had been left temporarily open by his housekeeper or butler. We've been in communication with Leslie Groff. She was the person who coordinated our meeting. We were met at the door by a butler, a real butler, an old gentleman with a limp. He led us to Leslie's circular office, beautiful, fabulous, and nice and bubbly. When she led us into Epstein's private quarters, we passed by the open door in the portrait. We went into his dining room, spoke to him about the proposal. After the discussion, the source returned to the waiting area and noticed a young Hispanic girl waiting to see Epstein. We were wrapping things up, and I noticed her hunched over her phone. I thought it was odd she was in the same waiting room. She was really young, about 14. I thought maybe she was the housekeeper's daughter. The source added during her hour-long discussion with Epstein, he struck her as a creepy man. He came out in pajamas. He wasn't messy, but he had on a white T-shirt, pajama bottoms, and bare feet. He was very gray and looked creepy. He looked like a villain to me. I immediately knew we didn't want to do business with him despite wanting the contract. I knew he'd bury us if something went wrong. The proposal fell through and she never worked with a billionaire. Really fascinating. This is the Leslie Groff who was so cheerful with her. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the Epstein thing is coming out more and more of the guy being, you know, an intelligence, pedophile, asset, delusional, psychopath. You know, it goes on and on. There's the picture of Bill Clinton in a blue dress has now been on Fox News. So they've been talking about it in mainstream media channels. The other the other photograph or the painting of what Epstein allegedly had, somebody had sent me, and I think maybe I sent it to you, Jim, or it's been bouncing around, has been a painting of George Bush Jr. Sitting on the floor with building blocks in a pile in paper airplanes, as if airplanes had struck the World Trade Center towers. That painting, I'll have to track it down, but if anyone has that, send us more intel on that, because if that was also included as a painting in Epstein's repertoire of George Bush Jr. Throwing paper airplanes into building blocks symbolizing the World Trade Center tower, that's pretty significant too. We all know Bill Clinton's a rapist. We all know that he has sordid, devilish activities, and it's a sign of the demoralization of America that we have entertained and allowed someone like that. But the internet really has been the only thing that's changed everything. So how this is going to play out, again, we come back to, as Lionel from Lionel Media had said, the only thing that matters is what is being done with this in a legal courtroom setting. If Epstein is dead, then Barr needs to be kicked out and resigned, and Trump needs to do a full investigation and bring it before Congress, because this was a honeypot trap of intelligence, an intelligence weapon being used against American congressmen and people of influence, and it could be Israeli operations to garner intelligence and influence people. Look at Lindsey Graham and his homosexuality. He's very easy to influence and squeeze and change. Mm-hmm. Maybe he puts on a good veneer for being pro-Trump, but he certainly can shift and go in the direction of war with everybody, war with Russia, war with Iran, and to hell with the consequences. That's what Lindsey Graham was all about, and he still is. So, this whole thing stinks of massive corruption and or incompetence, or as we've said, we like to believe there's a secret intelligence prosecution going, and this is all behind the scenes. But it doesn't smell good, because again, the average American citizen, what are they seeing and hearing in the mainstream media? They're seeing and hearing propaganda and lies, and that is destabilizing America. Let's not forget that there's a push to politicize, quote, white extremism as a domestic enemy, justifying the police state, justifying red flag laws. All of that is pushing America to a brink of major confrontation. And by being quiet about this, it does not bode well for the president. And beware of other false flags that may be erupting. And this, again, may have been a cover for things such as the Israelis bombing Iraq. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and I worry, Scott, that if Trump compromises himself, where the American people are left, I mean, it's without any candidate they could seriously support.
That's right.
Well, this is very interesting. El Rushbo thinks Trump just beat Acosta at his own game. This is Jim Acosta. You know, those press sprays Trump keeps doing on the White House lawn? Rush Limbaugh says it's an example of Trump winning yet again. Ask yourself, how long has it been since you saw one of those annoying Jim Acosta exercises in grandstanding? They were almost a daily event at one point there, right? But they're pretty much dried up. In fact, most of us have all but forgotten about that sad little glory hound, haven't we? How is that even possible when the president is talking to the press almost every single day, sometimes for 90 minutes at a time? Al Rushbo has it pretty well figured out. You know, one of the things I noticed, there's no White House press briefings anymore. They don't do them. They don't get together in the press room at 1 o'clock every day with the media asking questions. Guess what we don't see now? We never see the media on TV. We never see them. Trump has totally taken away their star turns. He comes out of the White House on the way to the helicopter. He takes questions on the way, but the camera is always on him. We never see the drive-bys. All we do is hear them. And I'm telling you, they sound like a bunch of spoiled, rotten, impolite kids, all of them shouting their inane questions at the same time. But you never see their faces. Trump has taken away their face time in context of White House press briefings. Now, throwing this picture up, Brian, we have a picture here in the switcher. For those of you watching on the Ditto.com, this is what I'm talking about. This is what it looks like. And this is a video of Trump leaving the White House, heading to the helicopter. Trump leaves the White House on the way to the jet, Air Force One. That's the drive-by media, the press gaggle shouting their questions. You'll hear it in a minute Mr. President, Mr. President. They're shouting like a bunch of little spoiled rotten kids, but none of them are on TV anymore. He has taken that away from them. This is a still shot photo. This is not a video still shot. The only shot that was made available on TV today of this press availability was straight on the president from behind that gaggle of drive-bys. We'll post this at rushlimbaugh.com shortly, so you'll be able to see it there. Not all of you are watching on the Ditto.com, but this is not happenstance. It's not accidental. This has been done purposely, you know. They had these people like Jim Acosta and April Ryan and the rest of these egomaniacs showing off in the press room, simply trying to make names for themselves. Who could ask the rudest question? Who could express the greatest amount of disgust for Sarah Sanders and Trump? So they simply took it away from them. And that is what the press gets now. They are not on TV. And believe me, particularly for the television drive-bys, being on TV is everything. FaceTime is everything. And the Trumpster is artfully denying them that which they love. Rush Limbaugh. Meanwhile, there's alarm as Trump requests a permanent reauthorization of NASA's mass spying program exposed by Snowden. This is very disturbing. The White House is calling for reauthorization of a program that security agencies have used to spy on innocent people, violate their privacy, and chill free speech. Civil liberties groups and privacy advocates raised alarm Thursday after the Trump administration called on Congress to reauthorize an NSA mass surveillance program that was exposed by whistleblower Edward Snowden. The New York Times, which obtained the Trump administration's request to Congress, reported that the administration urged lawmakers to make permanent the legal authority for the NSA to gain access to logs of Americans' domestic communications, the USA Freedom Act. The law, enacted after the intelligence contractor Edward J. Snowden revealed the existence of the program in 2013, is set to expire in December, but the Trump administration wants it made permanent, according to the Times. The administration claimed in its letter to Congress, which was signed by outgoing National Intelligence Chief Dan Coats, that the NSA has suspended the spying program. But Free Press Action Government Relations Director Sandra Fulton said in a statement that this should give little comfort to those whose privacy rights are routinely violated by authorities. And here you have Patrick Toomey of the ACLU. It's long past time the surveillance program was shuttered once and for all. I agree with that. The White House is calling for a reauthorization of a program that security agencies have used to spy on the innocent people. The NASA program permits the mapping of relationships among members of marginalized communities and distant associates of targeted individuals, even when most individuals in those communities were never suspected of wrongdoing. Historically, authorities have used such overbroad authority to harass members of those communities, especially those who speak out when their rights are under threat. Patrick Toomey, senior staff attorney for the ACLU's National Security Project, urged Congress to ignore the Trump administration's request and let the surveillance program die. It's long past time that the surveillance program was shuttered once and for all, Toomey told the Times. The NASA has been vacuuming up hundreds of millions of American call records as part of a program that's hopelessly complex and lacks any discernible evidence of value. We should not leave such a sweeping, unaccountable power in the hands of our spy agencies. Very disturbing that the Trump administration would support its renewal. Scott, your thought?
I agree.
Well, it is, of course, Edward Snowden, who incidentally was a CIA asset in Bern, Switzerland, when the CIA was going after an American Swiss bank banker, Brad Birkenfeld. Ed Snowden noted that the CIA's tactic of going after Birkenfeld was to get him into a DUI situation, throw him into a jail in Switzerland, and the next day have a CIA agent go in and flash his badge and get Birkenfeld out and try and turn him. Brad Birkenfeld told me that very story in prison, and Edward Snowden described the same exact story that Glenn Greenwald. So Snowden has a history, and he also worked with me at Booz Allen Hamilton. He was in cyber, I was in PSYOP, but we mixed with the same people, and we did similar things. I don't go too much into a lot of that, but Snowden was a Booz Allen Hamilton guy, and he was a CIA guy, and his connection to Birkenfeld is earth-shaking, because his lawyer, too, was Jesselyn Raddick. Jesselyn Raddick was Brad Birkenfeld's lawyer, and I talked to her and communicated with her staff about all of the military dimensions of this and the military cover-up and the incompetency. There are military people that should be shot for treason for their participation in cover-up of the Swiss bank, Birkenfeld, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, matrix of intelligence that they brought. I was just the guy who pulled the horn, or the you know, the little choo-choo train horn when I discovered this, and whistle blowed it, if that's the right term. And nobody liked that, of course. Nobody likes a whistleblower, but when you take an oath to the military, you take an oath to the Constitution, when you discover crimes and domestic enemies and foreign enemies, you damn well blow the whistle. And you don't apologize, you don't back down, you don't retreat, you blow the whistle. And that's when they come against you, but they have nothing to come against you for. So, you know, all of this has been continuing to blow up. And Snowden's departure from America and his revelations of the NSA, CIA, Booz Allen Hamilton intelligence, matrix operations, the entire apparatus of these programs, only a tiny amount has been revealed, incidentally. That's the real crime, is that none of the American newspapers, or even The Guardian, has released a lot of the other stuff that Snowden saw and knew about and gave. And if the American people knew all of the surveillance, the psychological operation technology, the algorithmic technology, the computer programs, the software that is used to orchestrate psychological warfare, all of this stuff that we see now would be explained. And everybody go, aha, that's what we thought was happening. And now we see the technology that was signed off in 2008 and 9 and 10 that allowed it. That's what Snowden brought into the party. For Trump to allow the continuation of this is a betrayal against his original promise. It's a betrayal to stop illegal and unconstitutional activity, and I think it's a major risk. And at the same time, Trump has failed to cease and stop the Syria operations, the Syria destabilizations, and he's also jumped into Venezuela. He's jumped into all of the programs and the policies and the agendas that preceded him, where he was elected to come in and overthrow those agendas, to destroy those teams and financing system. And instead, he's doubled down on it by encouraging and continuing the sanctions against Syria and the confiscation of Iranian oil tankers because of sanctions against Syria. What the hell are we putting sanctions on Syria when Senator Dick Black goes over to Syria and says, my God, they're not killing Christians. Syrian President Bashar Assad is actually defending Christians. And so are the Russians, and so are the Iranians. The ones who are doing the harm are the Israelis and the Saudis. Senator Dick Black said that. That's why Andrew McCabe, the FBI director, tried to have Senator Dick Black killed by sending him back over to Syria as part of some terrorist hostage situation. Andrew McCabe sent 4 FBI agents into Senator Dick Black's office. That's what McCabe should be charged with. And he did it because he wanted his wife, Jill McCabe, to win the seat of Dick Black, to take that seat over, to remove Dick Black. Terry McAuliffe wanted it and Hillary Clinton wanted it. These are facts. These are not speculations. These are facts. These are testimonies. These are evidences that need to be investigated by the president if he wants any credibility whatsoever. Otherwise, you're just playing the same song and dance routine. And this is all leading again to a civil war in America. Never forget, when the Snowden revelations came out, what was going on in people's pulse, in the American pulse? They were outraged. They were angry. They were furious. They felt robbed. They felt violated. They were sickened. They may not have expressed it. They may not have taken to the streets. They may not have done anything about it. But in their hearts, the American people were angry and grieved and sickened and on their guard. They now said, aha, this government is out of control. I'm disconnecting. I'm backing away. I'm having nothing to do with them, and I'm not giving them anything. So I think with the Snowden revelations, the slow burn of a civil war was ignited. So the slow burn of a civil war is going to be amplified into a brighter and brighter, hotter and hotter burn when Trump continues these things and in fact makes them worse. He's made them worse when, again, all things being equal and judging by what we've seen in the mainstream media, He's made it worse because the Russians now have their navy in the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranians and the Russians are doing naval maneuvers, basically saying, you dare come in here, and Russia, Iran, and China, we're going to blow you out of the water. We're going to blow Qatar out of the land. You're never going to be America in the Middle East again. I see that happening. So Trump has done that. He's been pushed in that way, or he's done it by himself. I don't care. He's done it. And then you've given away the Golan Heights. Now you're continuing the war on Syria, and now you're confiscating tankers. Now you're also allowing people like Sigal Mandelker, the dual Israeli citizen, in the Department of Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control, to launch sanctions against New Horizon Conference. And let me end it by saying this. The people at New Horizons Conference who went with me, I was at New Horizons Conference in Iran last year in 2018 with Phil Giraldi, a former CIA guy, Shipman, a former State Department guy, Michael Springman, a former State Department guy, Michael Maloof, a former Pentagon guy, Kevin Barrett, and a variety of other people, Sandra Hicks. And we were all over there. And everybody has had a visitation by the FBI, except me. Everybody has a visitation by the FBI telling them, you will not go back over that conference, or else you will be thrown in jail. You will be prosecuted, you'll be charged, you'll be fined, because you'll be in violation of the Sanctions Act. Somehow, an American going over and speaking his piece, being asked to speak and talk about everything and anything, nothing classified, but somehow an American going over and speaking to try and cultivate peace and connections and tolerance and relationships, our constitutional rights are being stopped using the statute of violations by an Israeli-American citizen named Sigal Mandelker, who's working for Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury, who's been over all the time in the opening of the U.S. Embassy in in Jerusalem, and all this other stuff. This is the Israeli Zionist control of American citizens. It cannot be tolerated. It needs to be taken to court. And again, all of this to me indicates a slow burn of a civil war, quickly ratcheting up into a hot burn of a civil war. And Trump, if he doesn't get ahead of that and get on the right side, which he may be, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's on the American citizen side. But if he's not, and if he is listening to bad people, that confiscates our rights, that shuts us down, that prosecutes us for going to the New Horizon Conference and all of this other NSA listing stuff, he's probably going to be taken out as president or worse, because it seems like the American people are not going to tolerate it ever again. They put up with it under Obama. They put it up under Bush. 9/11 has been exposed as totally false. There's legal paperwork in New York right now being filed. The New York Police Firemen Bureau, the firemen have filed a letter saying, we want this investigation to be conducted because there were explosives that blew up the World Trade Center tower in the basement, in the lower areas, that our firemen were killed by. And they've written a letter demanding that this be investigated. And the firemen of this country, Jim, could wind up being the true Batman superhero that rises up in a paramilitary capacity and inspires every firehouse across the land to stand with their firemen brothers who've died of cancer and been killed in that event, and really has the trigger that could cause a major revolution of this country. All of this is coming up to a head, Jim.
Yeah, and Scott, you are the spearhead of all this enthusiasm and truth and everything that we need to do, being a whistleblower these days, because we really can't trust the government anymore. And I will say, I think there is some actuality here that truth versus official facts and acts. That's where we're at with 9/11 and Kennedy and everything else. The truth is still at opposites of the official stories, folks. You can't accept that anymore. We got to blow that whistle. Join us as Scott's the spearhead and the firemen, everybody else. We can do it. Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Scott, I think it's obvious this is a Zionist operation here against
Absolutely.
those who have been participating in the New Horizons Conference, because you are among the most intelligent, knowledgeable, and effective critics of Israel's involvement in the Middle East and corruption of the American political system. So they're punishing you. You are being quite deliberately harassed by the Zionists inside the administration, who are exploiting their opportunities to harass and punish you for exercising your rights as an American citizen. It is a disgrace.
It is illegal too. They're the criminals, not you. Yep. Go ahead.
We have a number of developments in foreign policy, and we can break them down into segments. China and the U.S. have been engaged for some time now, and it doesn't seem to be going terribly well. China has made it clear what it would like to see from the U.S., laying bare deep differences between the two sides. Vice Premier Liu said that in order to reach an agreement, the U.S. must remove all extra tariffs, set targets for Chinese purchases of goods in line with real demand, and ensure the text of the deals is balanced to ensure the dignity of both nations. That all sounds to me very reasonable. As the talks ended, China's Ministry of Foreign Trade issued a response to Trump, who's been warning China not to keep stalling on the talks. In response to the question of Trump's tweets, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Huai Chaiyun said that although she was not aware of the latest developments during the talk, it was clear the U.S. was continuing to flip-flop. I believe it doesn't make any sense for the U.S. to exercise its campaign of maximum pressure at this time. It's pointless to tell others to take medication when you're the one who is sick. The People's Daily, mouthpiece of the Communist Party, also responded to Trump Wednesday with a commentary saying China has no motive to rip off the U.S. and has never done so, and China won't make concessions against its principles on trade. In a series of tweets that cheered markets, Trump declared Friday the talks with China had been candid and constructive. Mind you now, this is a report from weeks ago. The relationship between President Xi and myself remains a very strong one, and conversations into the future will continue. Further talks are possible, but there's no immediate plan for the next round, according to a person familiar with the negotiations. Liu's comments reveal a new fault line. Whereas U.S. negotiators previously accused China of walking back on commitments to change laws on technology transfer and other issues, Liu argued the U.S. team is pushing for bigger Chinese purchases to level the trade imbalance than had originally been contemplated. According to Liu, President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump had achieved an initial consensus on a number when they met in Argentina. That is a very serious issue and can't be changed easily. The amount of purchases by China should be in line with reality, according to a commentary by the state news agencies in Now on Saturday. China also sees the removal of the extra tariffs that have been imposed since last year as a precondition to a deal, whereas U.S. negotiators see retention of some of those duties as a key mechanism to force a deal. Meanwhile, and these are now more current reports, Pakistan PM Prime Minister Khan, the world must seriously consider the safety of India's nuclear arsenal. This was from Sunday, Zero Hedge. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has gone on a blistering attack in a series of Twitter statements arguing the world must seriously consider the safety of India's nuclear arsenal under control of the fascist Modi government. The world must also seriously consider the safety and security of India's nuclear arsenal in the control of the fascist, racist, Hindu supremacist Modi government. This is an issue that impacts not just the region, but the world, Khan tweeted Sunday. Khan's words came as the AFP is reporting some 4,000 Kashmiris thrown into detention amid an unprecedented crackdown by tens of thousands of Indian troops, enforcing a legal revocation of Jammu and Kashmir's autonomous status. It also comes 2 days after Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh detailed India's no first use of nuclear policy, hinting it could become permanent. Pakistani officials have said this is a distinction from India's genocidal policies against Muslim Kashmirs. India has been captured as Germany had been captured by Nazis by a fascist, racist, Hindu supremacist ideology and leadership. This threatens 9 million Kashmiris under siege for over 2 weeks, which should have sent alarm bells ringing across the world with UN observers being sent there, Khan tweeted. And speaking of the Hindu nationalists, Bharatiya junta leadership in New Delhi, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which on August 5th, J&K's status quo, ability, and rights to maintain their own governance, Khan described further. One can simply Google to understand the link between the Nazi ideology and ethnic cleansing and genocide ideology of the RSS BJP founding fathers. Already, 4 million Indian Muslims face detention camps and cancellation of citizenship. The world must take note, as this genie is out of the bottle and the doctrine of hate and genocide with RSS goons on the rampage will spread unless the international community acts now to stop it. Since the crisis began 2 weeks ago, through New Delhi's voiding Article 370 of the Constitution, there's been a reported buildup of Pakistani forces along its side of the line of control in Kashmir, meaning at any moment the heated rhetoric could spark a major war between the nuclear-armed neighbors and rivals. More, Hong Kong's inevitable showdown. This reckoning with Beijing's authority was baked into the cake 22 years ago when the Union Jack came down over Government House. It's impossible not to admire the bravery and commitment of pro-democracy demonstrators displayed daily as they clog Hong Kong streets, shut down its airport, and disrupt the territories beating hard in Central, the commercial and financial district. But neither can one deny the tragic fate that appears near as Beijing stiffens its resolve and signals the threat of military intervention. There's no question of Chinese President Xi Jinping compromising Beijing's authority to mollify those now in their third month of protests across Hong Kong. He is too firm a believer in the primacy of the Chinese Communist Party to entertain any such risk. But there is too much at stake for the Chinese president to order mainland troops or police units into the territory, short of a decisive challenge to the local administration's ability to govern. This accounts for Beijing's restraint over the past 10 weeks. The best outcome in prospect now, and the chances of this appear slim at the moment, is that Xi will authorize influential political allies in Hong Kong to frame a set of reforms sufficient to isolate demonstrators by eliminating the broad public support they have to date enjoyed. In any other resolution of this crisis, the democracy advocates in the street stand to lose everything. Even as they number in the hundreds of thousands, even millions, they are simply no match against a government intent on centralizing control over a nation of 1.4 billion. The escalating protests against Hong Kong were a long time coming. So was Beijing's refusal thus far to give way to any of the demonstrators' substantive demands, apart from suspending an extradition bill. The protesters are right. They were promised autonomy, civil liberties, and democratic government by way of the one country, two systems principle China committed to once it reassumed sovereignty from Britain in 1997. Beijing is right too. Sovereignty is to be defended as a precept beyond negotiation. Once the Union Jack came down over Government House, no foreign power could credibly purport to tell China how to govern its own real estate. The foreign ministry in Beijing made this clear in a bluntly worded statement 2 years ago. Meanwhile, Iraq has closed its airspace even to U.S. coalition flights after a suspected Israeli raid. In what is a severely underreported, perhaps the most alarming development out of the Middle East this week, Iraq's government has said it's ready to down any aircraft violating its airspace amid a blanket ban on unauthorized flights not specifically approved by the Prime Minister's office. Military Times reported the day after Iraq closed its airspace on Thursday. U.S. military officials in Iraq will now seek out Iraqi approval before launching any air operations, a move made a day after that nation's prime minister announced a ban of unauthorized flights, including those involving coalition forces fighting ISIS. Prime Minister Abdul Ahmadi called for an end to all unauthorized flights, including U.S. drones, spy planes, jets, or helicopters on Thursday. The directive demanded that all aerial vehicles comply with Iraqi law and operations must be under Iraqi government authorization. The U.S. coalition on Friday issued a statement saying it is ready to comply with the order. Meanwhile, Iran warns the U.S. don't interfere with the tanker's passage and mauls a naval escort. With Grace 1 now released after 2 failed attempts of Washington to bring the Iranian tanker under U.S. custody, since renamed the Adrian Darya and flying the Iranian flag, Tehran officials are still refusing to confirm its ultimate destination, where it will offload its 2.1 million barrels of oil. On Monday, Iran's foreign ministry issued new warnings to the United States not to mount any new attempt to seize the tanker. If this is done or even stated, it is a threat to free shipping, a spokesman said. Through its official channels, and especially the Swiss embassy, Iran has warned U.S. officials not to make the mistake of doing so, as they face bad consequences. Scott, if you are available, and I hope you are, we would like your comments on these stories about foreign affairs and developments in the Middle East.
Well, engaging in a guerrilla warfare against Hong Kong like we did in Vietnam. I think China is going to ramp up its military and go into a full crushing, destroying effect in Hong Kong to provoke President Trump to react, and in that reaction engage in a potential war where the Chinese have all the moral credential behind it, because they're saying this is our land, this is our people, and the U.S. is trying to overthrow us and destabilize the regime. And Trump, if he reacts, could lose 2020. If he gets into a war, if he loses a ship, if he goes into a full military counterstrike, there's a risk that he could lose, because the American people do not have the stomach for this sort of thing. They don't want to lose a single son with regards to going over to Hong Kong. So I predict the Chinese are not going to back down. They're not going to make a deal. They're going to go in using this as the momentum trigger to crush and take over Hong Kong in the next year. They have to do it before 2020 because they want to get Trump out of office. They want to defeat him so they can get back to a Democrat deal. And if they don't get Trump out of 2020, then all that paper is worthless, because now he's got another 4 years and he can strangle China. And I think they realize that. Now, how this materializes is another question, but I think that's what China's going to do. Jim?
Very good, Scott. Meanwhile, Tucker vacation sparked rumors that maybe he's being silenced. I'm very disturbed by this. I actually wrote a letter to Fox News saying, Tucker is the only show worth watching on cable television. Drop him. I'll never watch Fox again. Meanwhile, the Russia hoax, if you want more, it's out as an ebook. And, of course, you can find Greg Jarrett's The Russia Hoax on the internet. I welcome, Don, your final closing remarks for us now.
Oh, boy. What can I say except that you guys are the best, and this show is one that I think we ought to share, because it's time to blow the whistle, folks. It's time to call a halt to all these false flags and the false acts of things. So thanks for watching Truth versus News here on August 19th. This has been an outstanding show. You guys are the best, inspiring everybody. So I just want to wish you to
remember this, Don. One of the reasons they may be taking out Tucker is because he met with us in San Francisco.
That's right.
Copy a shell game and all of the true material. If they're panicking, this could be one of the reasons that they're panicking, is because Tucker's asking questions about the real crimes. And I stand with you, Jim. I would never, ever watch Fox again if they got rid of Tucker Carlson.
Me too. I would either. Thanks so much. Adios.